Okay, we got another one, and this time I'm going to go with a Nimzo Larsen. We haven't played one of these in a while, and we end up with a nice double fianchetto position. Nothing extravagant. I don't mind trades so much. Picked up a little bit of time there, a little hustle. And looks like castle and king side's off the table, so I'm considering moving the lady out of the way and going long. So how to organize my pieces the best here. That's interesting, but that makes me want to fight over this square, and I don't think that that's his most accurate play. Okay. We'll go that way. Now I don't have to worry about d4 ever being played. When my knight comes here, I'll be able to castle cleanly. I'm even looking at queen b5 check right now. Black's behind in development. It feels a bit awkward. Okay, that encourages me to develop. Not a big fan of Black's position. I'm going to pressure that a bit more. I am going for this, even though I can keep tension, the e-pawn is going to fall. Whether he trades or not, my knight can return back to c3, pressing the e-pawn, and the pawn is going to fall. So one way or another, this ends. So queen takes, knight takes, I'm hitting the pawn. If castle queenside, knight a7, king b8, knight b5, and I go back to c3. In the meantime, if he goes g6, I probably have something like f5 to keep the e-pawn from being defended. One way or another, I'm winning a pawn. I know that. Okay, so we're hitting these guys. Needs to do something about that. So I'm getting the a pawn and then coming back. I expected g6 to be able to play f5 or e6. e6 makes probably more sense. That way the bishop or knight could potentially use the e7 square. This position is still... It started with f6, and it just kind of went downhill. That one I didn't expect at all. That keeps his pieces kind of silly. I don't know about that. And I'm not in a hurry to grab this pawn. I don't want to drop that guy. So we'll just go long and put the rook on the h file to keep an eye on him, keep him honest. Potentially we have bishop a3 and bishop takes e7 once the knight moves. All right, yeah, let's change gears. And so instead of going back to c3 to pressure the e-pawn, let's go to d4, and we're eyeing e6. So in the event of that pawn pushes, we either capture it normally or en passant. Okay, if b4, this looks like this is a backbreaker. Knight moves, knight e6 check. So that forces that. And normally this is where a master rated player would resign, as there's... Okay, yeah. See, yeah, you get a good feeling for the respect of your opponent. Nothing much there. Pretty straightforward, solid game. And occasionally, when you play an opening which isn't popular, you can get these types of odd responses from your opponent. And it was as if as soon as he got out of his first two move comfort zone, H5, he started to get creative, which that's what you want to see when you're the stronger player. Because they're now, not in theory, they're not in book, they're having to think move by move. And if you are the stronger player, you already have an advantage when it's me versus you. When you are playing a much stronger opponent, you want to try to stay in theory for as long as possible that you know and you're comfortable with, because you can be rest assured that you're playing the best moves possible. So once we get here, I mean, the engine doesn't like my decision at all. E6, very natural. But F6, that begins to make me want to go after him. And E5, okay, that makes sense now that I see it, because if takes, the idea is Queen H4, and that's devastating. So F6 was not that bad. He just needed the correct follow-up. Bishop E4, on the other hand, and we see the eval go miserable immediately. And Queen H2 makes sense with the idea of going after the wayward knight. I simply keep an eye on the pawn, and it didn't hate Queen B5, didn't hate Knight A7, F5, yep. King E2 keeps the king closer to the future potential action. It always feels nice to castle queenside, but I guess justifiably there's no reason to do so here, even though the eval doesn't change that much. Knight D4, and it likes E5 after B4. Definitely he could have resigned on the previous move, but etc. Idea simple. I'm just going to defend this so I can capture. And there's really no counterplay, and he can't really push the pawn. The knight can't really get to a good square to attack anything. It's understandable why the opponent would chuck it in.